Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome, Razorback fans, to Tuss Talk with Ty. It is Wednesday, January 3rd, for those of you who are catching this later on. As you could tell, beside me here is none other, Blake Lovell from Southeastern 14. How you doing, man?
Doing well, Ty. Good to talk to you as always. Start a conference plays here, and a little bit interesting situation for Arkansas based on what we've seen at this point. But yeah, always a fun time of year. So
Interesting non-conference for everybody, for everyone in the SEC. That is, it's been. I'm not gonna lie, been a little bit surprising. Obviously, last time you and I talked, I think we both agreed Tennessee was that clear number one. Arkansas was in there at number two. I want to say we had Kentucky, A&M, all those teams up there. But as we sit today, now I know not all non-conference schedules are alike, but as we sit here today, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Auburn, Mississippi State are all 11 wins or more.
yeah,
What's surprised you the most so far?
yeah. I mean, it's like I feel like it's one of those situations where clearly, I think South Carolina and Ole Miss are the biggest surprise because I mean we could have talked for months, and I don't think we ever would have probably found a scenario where we thought that those teams would be a combined 23-1 right now. Again, I've said it. I just keep repeating because I'm like, I'll take one for this, but like I thought consensus South Carolina was going to be number 14 in a 14-team conference, and I just that's not going to happen now. Like just based on watching them play, they haven't played the schedule, as you said. Not all non-conference schedules are created equally, but I still think they're a good team based on what we've seen to this point. And Ole Miss, I don't think Ole Miss is going anywhere. I don't think they're going to go undefeated, but even if they lose to Tennessee on Saturday, I still think Ole Miss has a lot of upside having a full roster. Which remember, I mean, we were kind of looking at them and saying they may be down a couple players because of two-time transfer and all that.
Yeah.
So for now, I mean, they're the only team in the SEC that's won every game they played. So that has to mean something. So yeah.
They did beat Memphis.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, they're probably their highest quality win so far. Arkansas failed to do that, but that was a different Arkansas team. That almost feels like an exhibition game or a preseason game. So much has changed, and I realize, we're gonna talk about Arkansas. I know there's gonna be a couple names you and I are gonna go in on. But yeah, I am, to go back to Mississippi really quick, to the Rebels, to Ole Miss. Chris Beard, I said when he was hired, Ole Miss, that's going to be a turnaround year one. I didn't think they'd go 13-0. Listen, if they would have won 18 games, I forgot what they did last year. It was really bad. We're going to see a pretty big turnaround. I still don't know that at the time, I didn't think they'd be like a tournament caliber team. I mean, Ole Miss is still trying to, all these years, they're still trying to find that version of relevancy in basketball, like what they found in football and certainly in baseball, winning their national title in that sport just a couple of years ago. Ole Miss is turning it around as a program from football, basketball, and baseball. It feels like they're kind of riding a high right now. Lane Kiffin's killing it with the Rebel with football, and now you've got Beard with them in basketball. But I have been surprised watching them play. You're right, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, they're way better offensively than I thought they would be. I mean, they're a top 10 3-point shooting team in the country. I would have never, ever expected that.
Me either.
And so that's been the big difference. They're still not there defensively, but they're going to get better on that end because it's Beard. And offensively, I don't think they're going to keep shooting 40% from three, but that's at least been a big step in the right direction. So
it has. Yeah, it has. And I have a couple of Ole Miss fans that come through and they love to kind of troll the channel a little bit. They're actually probably more friends of the show than they are anything. But I told them, I think Tennessee's going to be a pretty rude awakening for them. They're going to have to play at Tennessee. That's going to be a hostile environment, but it's not like Beard hasn't coached in these type of environments before. I mean, it's going to be about his players and how well they respond. All right. Well, the SEC as a whole, how would you, I don't know, how would you grade their play so far? Like when you look at them, would you say it's Obviously, we just mentioned the big surprises. It kind of feels like the guys we didn't expect to be at the top are currently at the top in terms of wins and losses. But how do you think they performed overall in their non-conference scheduling?
I mean, I think it's been a pretty good non-conference for the SEC. You know, the way it started, there were some teams that dropped some games they shouldn't drop. Well, that theme continued for about a month. But I think over the past month or so, like you've really started to see some teams turn the corner. And specifically, I think what we have to keep in context here is there were several SEC teams playing without key players. And, you know, there were specifically look at teams like Florida, Mississippi State, A&M. All three of those teams probably lost games where if they had one of those key players that were sidelined for whatever reason, they probably win one or more of those games that they lost. And so those teams in particular, I think you circle. And, you know, again, I think you look at other teams like, I keep saying it and people are tired of hearing me say it probably, and we'll see if I'm right or wrong, but I think Alabama is one of the best 8-5 teams I've seen in a while. I mean, they are just, I know they've lost 5 games. I know they've lost 5 games to the best 5 teams they played, but they had a chance in 3 or so of those games. You know, defensively, I know there have been issues, but they're just so good on offense that I think they're going to just wind up outscoring a lot of teams in the SEC. And so I still think Alabama's really good. And remember, we're not even speaking about what I think are probably the top 3 teams. That's Tennessee, Auburn, Kentucky. I think the SEC has actually started off a little bit slow. The past month or so, I've started to see some teams really, I think, figure some things out. And if that theme continues, realistically, the top 10 teams in the league right now, if we say the bottom 4, which even Georgia, I think, can look at it and say, hey, we're on a nice, 8-game winning streak, whatever it is right now.
Yeah.
They're playing some pretty good basketball. But, you know, if you take Georgia, Missouri, LSU, Vanderbilt, if you say those are the bottom 4 teams, 11 through 14, the top 10 teams all think they have a great chance to make the NCAA tournament. And so even Georgia probably right now feels okay about their chances if they can just get some significant wins somewhere. So that's a pretty good place to be in as a league, I think, starting conference play.
So then you talk about the teams that have improved and kind of found their way. Arkansas clearly has been that team. The last, I guess we could say, I mean, they've won 5 out of 6, including a win over Duke, including a win over UNC Wilmington, couple sloppy games, and of course what really was a blowout in my opinion, although the score doesn't reflect that, in Tulsa when they played Oklahoma. I think really Oklahoma, that game felt like they won by about 16 or 20, but of course Arkansas only loses that game by 9. I think Oklahoma definitely let off the throttle a little bit. But lately, listen, they're 3-0 since a certain player was cleared by the NCAA and Mr. Minifield. So Arkansas seems to have found maybe some life with hopefully their true point guard in Minifield, who I believe belongs at that spot. How well does Arkansas, based on what limited knowledge we have of Minifield, because again, we've only got 3 games, and of course we had the Brazil issue where Brazil's injured, he comes back, he's not really looked the same, but he's still kind of there, he's still getting shot blocks, he's still altering shots. I know this is a pretty wide open question, but how do you feel about the Razorbacks going up against the SEC this year? We got 18 games. What do you like about them, and how do you feel about their shots against their shot against the SEC?
Well, I'll just go ahead and give a spoiler. We've done our own predictions on Southeastern 14. I did another show in the past 4 or 5 days, and I'll just say, I talk all the things about Auburn and such, but I'm picking Arkansas to beat Auburn on Saturday, and I think this is kind of the turning point where, like you said, you see what you've seen now that Minifield is in the fold. I think you're starting to see a team that's figuring it out, and they just happen to start slower than usual. You know, they're going to have one of those stretches. We said it going in the season. You know, usually with Muss, it's about this time, but they had it earlier this year. I think the way things are trending seems to be trending in the right direction, and I think he's a big reason why, because that's what we've been talking about, right? Is this the guard play? The guard play's not been consistent to this point. But now that you've got him in the mix, like you said, I think it's very clear. If you're trying to find a rotation, which we always know. I mean, how many teams in the country have played, 11 guys, 12 or more minutes at this point? Not many.
Not many.
Arkansas has.
Yeah.
And so I think this is a situation where you're starting to figure out, okay, we found this guy needs to be on the floor. This guy needs to be on the floor. This guy needs to be on the floor. I think the wheels are turning on the Muss bus, so to speak. Like the wheels are turning in that he's figured out now. I know he's still playing a lot of guys, but I think you're starting to see who those guys are going to be when they get into these close games in SEC play, which is inevitable. I think they're figuring it out. And so for that reason, to me, it comes down to one key to their season the rest of the way. Obviously, outside of just the consistency with the guard play, because it's a very good guard league, as we know. I mean, we talk about it all the time. I feel like it used to be a big man league, but now it's like the guards just kind of drive everything based on the styles of play. You got a lot of teams who want to push the pace and all that. But if they can just find some easier offense, and by that, I mean they need to force some more turnovers on defense to get easier offense. That has been the key in them making some of the runs that they made in recent years. It's been the key in them being a good defensive team, elite defensive team, probably the past 3 seasons, right? They're not there right now. We all know that they haven't been consistent defensively. There's too many easy baskets. Again, there's not enough forcing turnovers, forcing teams to make mistakes. If they can get better at that, if they can get a little bit more aggressive, not foul, all those kind of things, then I think that you're talking about a team that is still going to have a great chance to finish in the top tier of the SEC. Again, there's a lot of competition right up there. We talked about all those teams, but talent-wise, it's still there. It's the reason why I picked Arkansas second going into the season. Sure, right now, do I look like a goofy for doing it? Sure, but talent-wise, it's still there. And so I am willing to bank on that talent, and I want to see the defensive improvement. I want to see them force some more turnovers, get easier offense, because I think there are some things that are still going to apply. You know this. We've talked about it in the past. There's always been a certain amount of frustration with the way Muss runs his offense, because sometimes it can seem a little bit let's just throw it out there and let's just see what happens, right? Let's see what happens. Let's let the talent take over. But I think they need to get a little bit more easier baskets, force some turnovers, get more points off turnovers. If they can do that, if this team can improve defensively, they're going to be one of the top 5 teams in the SEC.
How much stock do you put in net rankings right now?
Oh man, I hate the net rankings with a passion. But they matter, right? It's one thing for me to just hate on the net rankings like I always have, but they do matter, and so you have to at least look at them and understand that this is a metric that is used by the committee that matters most, right? The one that's picking the NCAA tournament. And so for Arkansas to be in the 80s right now, not an ideal spot. But the thing is, if this was I don't know, what conference fan base do I want to make unhappy right now? If this was the, I don't know, Pac-12, ACC, leagues that just are not as strong from top to bottom, then you maybe have a little more concern, saying that you have fewer opportunities to improve those rankings. You have fewer opportunities to play NCAA tournament teams. But if you're Arkansas, again, I mean, I'm looking down their schedule here. As of right now, I think 6 of their first 7 games are going to be against projected NCAA tournament teams: Auburn, Florida, Texas A&M, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Kentucky. I know some people are going to say Ole Miss and South Carolina aren't going to get there. For right now, though, they would be in the NCAA tournament if we were playing it today. So if we just take that's a lot of opportunities, right? And so it's a lot of opportunities to improve your net rankings. And then you go to the back half of the season: Tennessee, at Mississippi State, at A&M, at Kentucky, at Alabama. That's a lot of road games in there that are tough. So I just think there's a lot of opportunity to improve that net ranking.
Do you want to give a guess on 18 on where they end up?
Oh man. I mean, again, that they need to do some work up front here, because the back half, I just mentioned those road games. Their last 4 road games are at Mississippi State, at A&M, at Kentucky, at Alabama. The good news, you get LSU twice, you get Vanderbilt at home, you get Missouri twice, which both of those are winnable. Look, I think they can win 10 or more games in the SEC. which to me, if you go 9-9 this year in the SEC, unless it's an LSU or something that just doesn't have the body of work to this point. If you're a team like Arkansas, you go 9-9, I think you're fine. I mean, you're not feeling great about a top 8 seed or anything, but like you're in the tournament probably just based on the strength of the league. It's probably going to get 8 or 9 teams in, and so I think they can win 10,
which is crazy. I mean, when you think about it, I know you and I have talked about this before, but there was a time when getting 6 teams out of the SEC into the tournament was like, wow. Now it's like, they could have 8 or 9 this year, and I will say too, I think you're right. I agree with you. 9-9 should be good enough. The reason why I asked you about net rankings, it's been a hot topic between me and some other people in a group chat about how much stock do you put into net rankings right now, and it's like, well, you got to start somewhere. And 80s going into league play isn't ideal. And like you said, thank God you're in the SEC and you're not in the Pac-12 where they don't really take you serious out west. So you and I'm of the belief, I said this a couple of weeks ago, 8 and 10 is not going to be good enough to get in like they did last year. I don't think so. I mean, you kind of already said it. 9 wins, you're in, or you should be. A lot of basketball, obviously, 18 games, plus we have the SEC tournament to kind of figure out where all the chips fall. Let's focus really quick on I want to ask you about Brazil. I know you've watched a little bit of Razorback basketball this year. I know you have, especially when you've got them up in the top 3 or preseason like I did. What's your take on Brazil pre-injury, post-injury? What differences are you seeing, if any? Is it more of a Musselman, kind of where he's positioning him on the floor? What's your take on him at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, he's one that I think it's like, if we were grading everybody at this point, right? It's sort of like if you had to put a team grade, player grade on all these guys. I still feel like, and it'd be unfair, and it's a cop out, but like I still feel like it's like incomplete, right? I still feel like we don't know exactly just yet, long term. And I think this is Brazil. I think he's in the situation that a lot of other guys are in. Like we said, how many teams in the country have played as many guys as Arkansas has played, the amount of minutes that they played them? And of course, he is I think he's averaging 28 minutes a game. So he would be third, I think, behind Mark and Devo, which Minifield will factor into the mix. He's at 27 minutes or something right now. He's going to play probably that or more, I would guess, moving forward. So, I mean, look, it's just kind of the same thing we just talked about. Like talent-wise, he is going to be a huge asset in SEC play because of the way the league is structured, because of the type of players that are playing at his position on a night in, night out basis, the guys he's going to go up against. By necessity, like he's going to have to be a big time factor in those kind of games, right? And I think, we were talking on this, actually, we did our preview today for the Auburn game. It'll come out on Thursday, but I mean, his best game of the season was against who? It was against Duke. It was against the best team that Arkansas technically has played to this point. If you're just looking at it by the rankings and such. And so we know that it's there. I do think, like you said, injuries are always it's always one of those things, right? And we could talk about players for, I don't know. I'm using like Alan Flanagan as an example, which was at Auburn, went to Ole Miss. But like, remember like last year, we kept saying, even the past maybe couple of years, like Alan Flanagan, he's a really good player. He just doesn't, maybe still not there. Like, even though he's back, ready to go. But again, I don't know if that's necessarily the case with Brazil. I mean, we've seen the upside that's there. And I think once we start to see Muss shorten that rotation, because I can't imagine there are going to be 11 guys playing 12 or more minutes the rest of the way. We know how this works. Every year, that thing starts to shorten a little bit. Maybe Brazil gets a little more comfortable in what they're asking him to do and all those things. But I still think he's one of the top 3 assets on this team in terms of if they're going to win 10 or more SEC games, like we just said, it's going to need to be him leading the way in some of those games. They're going to have to, or they're going to struggle.
I agree. He's got to be the guy. I like at times Mitchell seems like he can get some quality minutes and then muscle pull him, and then Lawson, you don't really know what to expect. We know he's got them long arms. He could certainly alter shots, get blocks. but there's only one Brazil on this roster.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I wanted to bring up really quick. I know we've already gone over the SEC and everything and how well Arkansas will fare. Stepping back a minute, UNC Wilmington, something that people, and I'm seeing it in my Discord, I'm seeing it on social media. Arkansas scored 106 points without Battle getting significant minutes, with Minifield playing the majority. I mean, I forgot what his minute total was. It was a lot. I know UNC Wilmington isn't exactly a powerhouse, but this is a team that went into Rupp, got a win there, 80-73 a little while back, a couple weeks ago, and then they walk into Bud Walton Arena, and the second half, it was never a ball game. Did you watch the game? I wanted to get your thoughts. I probably should have started there, actually. What was your take on that game? I was, if you would have told me that, hey, Battle's only going to get about 4 or 5 minutes of play, and by the way, you're going to score 100 plus points without your leading scorer at the time going into that ball game, you're going into that game without him, or with him only getting about 5 minutes, and he's your leading scorer, and you're going to score 106. I would have said no way. What were your thoughts really fast on that? Did it shock you at all? I mean, to see Minifield go off the way that he did and for Arkansas to perform the way that they did, or did it go about as you expected?
This was like the vintage Eric Musselman game in that he found his 3 guys who were going to play 35 or more minutes or whatever it was. You know, it's like last year we kept saying he took the SEC, the top 5 guys in minutes in the league. Well, you could count on 3 Arkansas guys being in there because, you know, it wound up being Black, Council, and Davis, right? And so, you know, Davis, Minifield, Brazil, I think they all played 33 or more minutes in that game against Wilmington. And like you said, you kind of take Battle out of the mix, but that is one of those things where I think has been a strength for him in that, yeah, like if we'd have won that game on paper, if you'd have told me before the game, make a prediction here, how many points Arkansas are going to score if Khalif Battle plays 7 minutes, scores 2 points? I'm like, ooh, 75, 70, something like that. But they score 106. And it just kind of became that, whereas you're watching the game, you're like, all right, he's leaning on these guys in a game where, you know, again, their best scorers he's a non-factor. So how do they get there? And then it's just, you're riding the wave, right? You're riding the wave of what works. And Minifield worked. Like, gets the free throw line 17 times. You know, they don't turn the ball over a lot. And so I tend to think, for all we talk about, like the minutes averages at this point and how many guys are playing, this is what we see time and time again, that eventually there's going to come a time. I'm not saying Khalif Battle is going to be out of that mix, but you know what's going to happen. Each game, there is going to be kind of a scenario where you look up and Muss is like, all right, you know what? Screw it. I'm going with these guys, and we're just going to ride them until the wheels fall off. And I think that's what's going to be happening with this team. Like, again, you may see certain guys play a couple minutes here, a couple minutes there, but I felt like this was the kind of game where, okay, again, going back to what I said earlier, there's something turning there. He realizes what they have to do, the position certain guys need to be in, and how they're going to be able to pull this off moving forward. Because that's not a bad Wilmington team. People just look at it, but we knew what Wilmington did to Kentucky. That was a team that was riding, red hot heading into that game, and Arkansas puts 106 on them. Again, without Battle doing anything, and so the luxury of options. They have so many options that this is still one of their strengths, is the depth. Even though it's been infuriating at times in terms of consistency, depth is still one of the strengths that they have, and they're going to be able to use that in SEC play where, oh, by the way, if you've watched SEC basketball before, you know every game is going to feature about 50 free throws. And I know Arkansas is one of those teams that doesn't mind that because they want to get there 30 times a game. So you need the depth.
Top 5 in the country.
Yeah, so not bad.
So the theme of this was Arkansas kind of, versus the SEC. I don't know that there's anyone other than maybe Tennessee. I don't know that anybody in the league has the kind of depth that Arkansas has, again, outside of Tennessee. And now Tennessee has, you like some of the pieces they have back. And even they've kind of, they've started off a little bit slow, but they've played a really tough non-con schedule. And I would argue Arkansas's played a pretty tough non-con schedule, with at least 2 losses where you felt like, okay, Minifield, maybe even more than 2 losses. Minifield probably changes the outcome of those, or at least makes them better. The Oklahoma game, I don't know what to make of that. That's nothing new. The way Arkansas has played inside that building, the BOK Center in Tulsa. But yeah, I mean, do you still stand by that? Do you still feel like, based on the work that we've seen, the body of work that we've seen so far, in terms of depth, is there anyone else outside of Arkansas and Tennessee, or who do you feel like is the best challenge outside of Tennessee to Arkansas in that depth?
Yeah, I still think they're the 2 deepest teams because it's like, I mean, Kentucky's probably 7 or 8 deep, but again, they don't feel like maybe they're 10 deep. And some of that, it's like Kentucky doesn't have to be, just based on what they have. I think, and I know, like I know people are still to be determined on Auburn, but I think Auburn's deep. I think that's been one of the reasons why they've won as many games they have. And keep in mind too, like, we know Auburn hasn't played the same kind of schedule again, like in Alabama or Tennessee or teams like that, but they've just been dominating teams. Like they have just beaten the teams they should beat handily. And sometimes I think that can tell you a lot about a team. They're not letting teams hang around. They're just going out and just dropping them, right? I mean, if you take the App State game out of the mix, which is why, by the way, if you want to know why I picked Arkansas in this game, because we have 1 game sample size of Auburn to this point. And it's a road game at App State where they didn't look good at all. Yeah. And now they head into Bud Walton, and I just think it's a tough matchup. But yeah, I mean, I still think Tennessee and Arkansas are the 2 deepest teams. You could throw a Kentucky in there, and Auburn in there, but beyond, I think Florida's depth's been a little bit more surprising. I mean, Ole Miss has got depth. Like I said, if they've got the 2 guys back, Murray and Cisse, like they've got more depth than we thought they would. So there's some deep teams in the SEC, but numbers wise, I don't think there's anybody matching the depth of Tennessee and Arkansas.
Yeah, I agree. And that's, again, one of the reasons why I picked Arkansas at second. Although, and like you said earlier, yeah, we might feel a little, damn, I guess we were wrong, but we still got to get through the conference schedule. I mean, I wouldn't judge anyone too harshly based on their non-conference play, especially Eric Musselman and the Razorbacks.
I mean, here's the way I look at it, Ty. It's like, I picked Arkansas second in the SEC. They haven't lost an SEC game yet. So technically they can still
we're not technically wrong yet. Let it play out.
Yeah. I mean, technically they're in first place right now, tied for first with everyone else.
That's right.
They've got a shot.
It's a whole new season. I mean, really, we're gonna go with that, and we're gonna stick to it. Well, Blake, I appreciate you, man. I know you've got another show to go to, or you got something else coming up. So I do appreciate you hopping on, as always, and I'm sure I'll have you on again soon.
Yeah, always enjoy it, man. Thanks for having me, and yeah, we'll talk soon.
All right, take it easy, man.
Thanks.
All right, Blake Lovell, everybody. He delivers as good as anybody. There we go. There's our red wall. There it is. Yeah, so I agree with him. I still like Arkansas's probably one of, if not the deepest teams in the SEC. And Minifield being cleared was certainly, I mean, that's good Lord. I mean, you're already as deep as you are, and on the overall depth, and then you bring in Minifield, and it just changes the whole thing. So always good to have Blake Lovell on. I didn't give him a proper outro, but you guys know where you can find him over on Southeastern 14. There's a reason why I keep bringing him back on. He's one of my favorite people. They do a really good job over on the SEC or Southeastern 14 YouTube channel. So make sure you go follow him on socials, go follow him or subscribe to him on YouTube. So KD Johnson having flashbacks of Bud Walton. Storm the court. What? Scott, what do you mean storm the court? It's just Auburn. It's just Auburn. What are they ranked? 25th? Nah. Let the games begin. So it's going to be big, man. I mean, this is where the rubber meets the road. I also agree with him. I think 9 should be good enough to get them in. That's 500 in the league. The SEC this is not the SEC of 2017 or 16, 15, 14. This league in the last 4 or 5 years has changed a lot. Now I don't know what the numbers are in terms of who they get into the postseason compared. I mean, I do remember it's generally been a conference where if you get 6 guys or 6 teams, if you manage to get 6 teams in, that was a decent year for the SEC. Now that would be a disappointment. And it starts with the caliber of coaches you have here. Right? I mean, they just brought in, my God, you just brought in Chris Beard at Ole Miss. Dennis Gates, say what you want about Missouri. I did not expect them to have the kind of year that they had. Bruce Pearl is still a quality coach. Of course, you got Nate Oates, Eric Musselman, John Calipari, even though sometimes I'm amazed he still has a job at Kentucky, considering how high their standards are there. I mean, there's a number of guys here. Lamont Paris off to 2022 was his first year at South Carolina. This year, he's got them off to a good start. Buzz Williams, I'm a Buzz Williams guy. I like Buzz. I would have had no issue with Arkansas hiring Buzz Williams. Do I think we got the better end of the deal there? Absolutely, with Eric Musselman. But yeah, this is this. Of course, you've still got Rick Barnes. That's another guy. I mean, he's been at Tennessee. If you think about it, he's been there almost a decade. Isn't that crazy? Seems like yesterday. I remember when they hired him. It was such a big deal. But he's been there almost a decade. That's nuts. That's crazy to think about. He was hired in 2015 to go coach the Volunteers. So, yeah, and then also Jerry Stackhouse at Vanderbilt. I like Jerry Stackhouse. I mean, you talk about getting the most out of a group of guys. I mean, let's be real. It's Vanderbilt at the end of the day. But, how long has Stackhouse been at Vanderbilt? Since 2019, is that right? 2018, 2019. It was pre-COVID. I remember that. So, yeah, the quality of coaches, I mean, that you see the reflection of what happens. You have a far better conference. You have a far better it just brings the whole level up, brings everybody up in the conference, makes you better. So yeah, I like Buzz as well. Yeah, let the games begin. I already read that. You gotta bring out the Dookie rope chain Saturday. Well, no, it's we call it it's the dough ball. Even though they're not a sponsor, I'm probably going to change it. But it's a dough ball gold chain. Okay, so it's probably inappropriate to call it the dough ball player of the game gold chain because dough ball's an alcohol after all. So we probably should take this off. Can we would that be considered a good thing to do? No, I don't think so. We can't have but this is the gold chain, and whoever gets player of the game, I'm going to wear it on their behalf because obviously they can't be here. Last time it was Minifield. I don't remember who it was before that. We've only done it twice. We're going to do our breakdown on Friday. We're going to get caught up on the transfer portal and everything that we can on Friday. There's going to be some news. There's already been some stuff kind of whispered. Sounds like Arkansas may be taking a player, or I should say a player is taking Arkansas off of his short list. So I'm going to wait till I get some confirmation on that, and we'll talk about it on Friday. We have our predictions up in Discord. If you haven't already, I mean, these predictions are just popping off. I mean, we've got already, I think, almost 30 on every one of these. We've got Ole Miss, Tennessee, Clemson at Miami, Arkansas and Auburn, and then we have, of course, the national championship game is also up. Number 2 Washington versus number 1 Michigan. Wait, Washington was 3rd, I thought. They weren't 2nd. Anyways, we got that game up. And that's got almost 30 picks. So if you're in our Discord and you want to get some XP, make sure you're there. And if you're a Patreon supporter, you're going to get bonus XP. Crazy how Hogs can play well when Battle or Mark go out. Mark was out in Duke game and team looked great. Well, I listen. There's still guys you got to have on the floor. And I know every time someone like that loses minutes and you see a better result on the floor, well, then that player must be the problem. Well, it's so much more complicated than that, I mean, that means someone else is getting more minutes that maybe your opponent doesn't have a lot of film on. It's kind of like when we talk about, well, it's like when we talked about Kenny Guyton when they walked down, and that's different. That's apples and oranges, but still, when they went down to Florida, I know that played a big role in Arkansas beating Florida. That played a big role. They didn't know what to expect. They didn't know what offense. Now that's not even just apples and oranges. That's like apples and watermelons. That's a big difference there, not knowing the offense you're about to deal with and some of the personnel changes. But it goes along with the same theme in basketball where it's like what I said about Minifield and Battle. Auburn now has to prepare. And again, we're going to talk about this a little bit more in depth on Friday, but Auburn has to prepare for Minifield, but they don't know exactly what the dynamic is between Minifield and Battle. They don't have a ton of good minutes on the floor together at the same time. Battle had 7 minutes and 2 points. I think I said 4 minutes in the interview with Blake. It was 7 minutes. Or maybe I said 5 minutes. Anyways, he had 7 minutes, 2 points. He didn't have very good production. Now, either that's going to be the theme moving forward. Battle's minutes are going to come down a little bit. They're going to find a different rotation. So be it. Okay, as long as Arkansas is winning and Minifield's still helping to facilitate, Devo's helping to facilitate. Those are two guys that are going to probably the offense is going to move through a little bit better, or they're going to have to. That's where it's all going to start is with those two. Maybe we see less of someone else. Maybe we do see two forwards on the floor, or we see Brazil and Loss, and then you go with those three guys, and maybe that means Battle's going to lose some minutes somewhere. Maybe that means Mark's going to lose some minutes. So Auburn doesn't have they don't know what to expect in terms of, because we know Battle's going to be able to play. Battle's going to play. I said in the postgame show, I think he sprained his ankle. That's exactly what it was. He's going to be good to go on Saturday at 1:00 against Auburn. So now Auburn, you know how Muss is. He's probably going to, he's probably going to mix it up a little bit and show Auburn some things they haven't seen yet. And that's probably going to involve, maybe it'll involve Battle and Minifield in their roles on the floor and what they're doing at least on the offensive end of the floor. I didn't ask Blake. I was going to ask him. We only had 30 minutes today, but I was going to ask him a little bit about Arkansas's defense and the perimeter defense. Just kind of get his thoughts on it. I mean, he's a student of the game, and that's a bit of an understatement. Really curious where his thoughts are, though, on Arkansas's defense. That to me has been the strangest thing, right? I mean, Arkansas potentially on the offensive end of things might be a legit top 5 offense in the SEC. If they can continue to play this well with Minifield playing the point, and then Devo kind of playing the combo, whatever you want him to do. Of course, you love his size and athleticism. He's so far on the year, he's been better about not turning the ball over, but we all know sometimes when he drives, you hold your breath because we know what he can do. He can turn the ball over, but he can also do a lot of other things as well. So defense is something Arkansas's got to get better. They got to keep getting to the free throw line on offense. They got to keep getting points down in the paint. I'm not too concerned about shooting 22 threes a game and knocking down 35% of those. If you can do it, great. But we know that's never really been a part of Muss's. It's not really something Muss harps on a lot. They don't do a lot to set up the outside look. If they have an open shot, someone will take it. And sometimes it's ill-advised. Sometimes it's a heat check maybe. Someone hits a couple of threes, and then they think they can hit a couple more, and then they go over their next 3 or 4 shots outside. They're just not, and never really have been, a high percentage three-point shooting team, at least the last 2-3 years under Musselman. But defense to me is key. If they can fix what's going on out in the perimeter, they're going to be a handful. It's still entirely too easy, and I think Blake mentioned it briefly. It's still way too easy to drive the paint and get buckets at the rim. That's something they're going to have to figure out. Again, their defense, I think this is still so far the worst defense he's put on the floor in his time at Arkansas. When he came here from Nevada, I don't remember a lot about. I know they played really good defense over there, but I don't remember I had a whole spreadsheet on what he had done at Nevada, and I don't know where it's at, but Yeah, this was probably one of his worst defenses he's put on the floor since coaching college basketball. I mean, it's just not good. And the craziest thing is, it has the capacity to be the best team that he's ever put on the floor, which is kind of wild to think about. How you could be so bad on the defensive end of the floor in non-conference play, and yet we have this feeling like, yeah, but they still should be able to turn this thing around and be one of the better teams he's ever coached in college. So we'll have to wait and see. What's up, Chris Meadows? How you doing, man? All right. I'll be back on Friday. We're going to do our breakdown of this game, right? I'll give you my pick. I'll give you maybe a score. I don't know. I've not really been in the habit of giving scores this year. I never really do for basketball, but maybe I will. But I will give a prediction on the game on Friday between Arkansas and Auburn. It's going to be a tall order. Auburn is a very good basketball team. So, yeah, and again, we're going to have some more stuff to talk football wise as well on Friday. So, yeah, you guys enjoy the rest of your week. I'll see you here in a couple of days. And that's it. I'll see you Friday.